So when we're talking about condo loans here,
Very unique market.
That's a very unique market, and
It
that's a
is unlike
question.
anything in anywhere else.
It's a question that I
South
get
Florida market
every time.
is
So oftentimes when I get a new inquiry on a property,
yeah.
they'll call. It'll be a condo. Eventually, lending will come up in the conversation, and they might say, "I'm pre-approved." And then the first thing I say is, "Hey, are you pre-approved for a condo, or is it just a general approval?" And the biggest reason is because condo lending is so different and complicated, and then I have to go and explain the nuances here. But I can only go so deep because generally what I say is when you get a loan, the lender has to, of course, qualify you as the borrower.
Yep.
But in addition to that, they have to qualify the property. Now, with a single-family home, generally that just means an appraisal. They check out the price, they make sure it's livable. But with a condo, it's much more complex because a condo is, in essence, just a part of a building. So they have to also qualify the building, and that's where it gets really complicated. So tell us about like when you are looking at a building, what are you
Yeah.
looking for?
No, I love what you said. I mean, it's a great way to think about it, right? Because we have to get the buyer formally approved, and the condo itself has to get formally approved, though, as well. So there is discovery in terms of the condo project to make sure that it meets requirements to be eligible for conventional financing. So,
That's what gets complicated.
that due diligence a lender will do, hopefully upfront so that there's no surprises
Yeah.
later down the line, week
I've
before
had-
closing.
We've had a lot of those
Yeah, so
surprises.
working with other lenders, obviously, but obviously we do our due diligence up front, but we do ask for the condo questionnaire, all right? So we want to make sure that what's the investor concentration? Are people paying their HOA dues on time? There's pending litigation, safety, structural issues, things of that nature. We want to make sure
The budget.
the financials are okay. Typically, ever since Surfside fell down, Fannie Mae that guarantees and purchases these loans, guarantees them, they want to know that there's at least 10% reserves because Surfside didn't have money in the budget and they kept punting on the repairs. So they didn't have the money to do these major renovations in order for them to get recertified. So we look at the financials, we look at the bylaws, we look at the master insurance policy. We referenced that early before. That seems to be a very large hurdle for a lot of condo
These
projects.
days, yeah, no, it really is. And what you touched on there with the Surfside collapse, everyone knows that now. I mean, yeah, that was national news.
Yeah, right in our backyard.
It changed things a lot, but what's important to note is that these things existed before that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had to qualify the building and look at everything you were just mentioning.
Yeah.
But before that, but post the Surfside tragedy, there has been an even bigger microscope on things like structural safety, the budget, reserves, and actually there's a law that the Florida legislature passed that goes into effect in 2025, mandating that these condo associations have, or at least are planning for their funds for these big capex expenditures, the big structures, concrete restoration, the roof, the electrical, basically what I say, the bones of the building. You get the structural safety of the building, and this is, I mean, some people say this is like an impending financial disaster for the state.
Right.
And it's important to know that this is happening because from a buyer's perspective, when you're looking for a condo, you need to watch out for all of these things. And it's a lot. Not gonna lie, and it's complicated. But that's why it's very important to have someone like Dennis and like myself to look at the health of a building before you make a purchase.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, working with a larger firm that does a lot of volume, a lot of times we've reviewed a lot of these projects in South Florida.
That's
right?
a great point.
So we have lists in terms of what may be ineligible or what is eligible, right? And then it helps us kind of like dial in and speed up the due diligence to say, hey, listen, we've reviewed this project already. We just need to do the master insurance policy. And, to your point, a lot of times, not to name names, but if you look at big banks, they just kind of go through the process, right? And they don't order the information till the end. And a lot of times they don't review the information. They have to get it to an underwriter. Then you're dealing with that turn time of how long they might have to review it before, timing wise, that's why it pays to work with a
Big banks
specialist.
are the worst. I mean, like, let me just tell you guys a quick story here, just because he bringing that up, it reminds me of a story about when Dennis saved a deal for me and my client when my client decided to work with a big bank. Now, I don't know how to name names. Like
No
he's
names,
saying,
no names. We
but
don't
let's
need
just say it started with a W.
Yeah.
It was a big bank. It started with a W. We won't go beyond that,
Okay,
right?
all right.
And look, he hit on that with the timing, but part of the issue is that a lot of these people, maybe they're not just paid on commission. They're not in the state. They're in the office. They leave at 5 or 6. They don't answer emails on Saturdays or Sundays. I mean, you can text this guy at Sunday at 7 p.m. He's gonna respond. That's just an example, but like to how you see that play out in a transaction is just it's a lack of urgency, and it is not having solutions when there are problems. Now, there's whenever you're in a real estate transaction, I like to say there's almost always problems, but there's almost always a solution. Now,
What happened
you
with
need
that?
to have
What happened with that one? That story you're going with?
yeah. Now you need to have someone with the solution. So in this case, what happened was this my client was under contract for a condo in Miami Beach, great building called the Floridian. This was an A+ borrower. This is a doctor
Yeah.
with a significant amount of money down. That's important when you're buying a condo, especially. And I think we were at like day 28 of of a 30-day contract.
Yeah.
And they just dropped the ball. They couldn't do the loan for an A+ borrower with a good amount of money down. And if memory serves me right, it was something to do with the insurance or the budget. I don't know, but they just weren't reading it right. And I call up Dennis. I convince my client to give him a call. He runs the client's financials, and this guy got it done in 9 days. Now I got an extension. He got it done in 9 days, and that's incredible for a condo. Just to give you guys a good idea of what it typically takes. I mean, a typical real estate transaction will take about 30 days, so 30 to 45 days. So to do an entire condo loan, when you have to get a full appraisal, do all of the review, it's in 9 days. That's incredible. So it's really important to have an expert on your side and to not just go with a big bank, because that's who you usually bank with.
Yeah. That's Dr. Z, right?
That was Dr. Z.
Dr. Z. Shout out Dr. Z. Hope you're enjoying Palm Beach Gardens, man. But yeah, no, I think in terms of choosing a lender, I think that's highly critical in terms of efficiency and being able to turn things around and condos. To kind of wrap this up, I mean, you do need to be very efficient and work with obviously professionals who know condos very well, because those that don't have an ability to read a budget and just basically sniff this stuff out, because as professionals, we don't want to waste buyers' times. We don't want to waste all parties' times, including the owners, the sellers submitting an offer, if we know that there could be a potential issue, or we sniff it out up front to just identify, hey, this is the information, and it set the right expectations for the buyer going into the transaction, that these are the things that we're going to be looking
Exactly.
out for.
And I mean, to save clients time, what I like to do is ideally get all that information up front, either before we go and see the property, or at least before we make an offer. And by doing so much business, I generally know the buildings that will be fine.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some buildings in Miami. Let me say, Biscayne is great. Axis in Brickell is great.
Yeah.
Flatiron in Brickell is great. Great financials, great association. 360 in North Bay Village. That one,
Yeah.
my favorite association ever. These buildings run smooth. Just they have good financials and everything else. No problem. So, I I I can help buyers or I can help direct buyers to buildings like that to save them time.
But on
And
top,
it's
but on top, saving the time also, Ryan, it means that sellers and owners have access to typically the master insurance policy and the budget because
yeah,
obviously
they should. Yeah.
they should, right? So if they have that, that information can get passed along so that we can kind of review it all initially to do that upfront due diligence.
Way better when you have that. Now sometimes it's a struggle to get because let's be real, working with condo associations in Florida
Sure, absolutely.
is a nightmare. I mean,
it's equivalent to the Wild Wild West.
they're slow. Oh my God. Anyways,
Yeah.
but we know how to get it done here. I mean, that's the bottom line, and there has been a push to I believe there was legislation to actually mandate a certain level of transparency with these documents.
Yeah.
And it's just been a slow process to actually get that stuff out there.
I didn't know that.
And it's happening. It's very slow. And
In typical Florida Island
yeah,
time fashion.
Of course, yeah. It'll make our lives a lot easier when we can get that information straight up. But until as of now, we just got to be a little bit more, I would say, adamant and diligent with getting that stuff up front.
Yeah.